Sunday, October 3rd, 2010. Han, just have a great time and don't worry about me. I've got plenty to do around here. I can't get into any trouble, Richard says as they walk down the sidewalk to the airport shuttle van. Just remember, don't let your sister talk you into anything stupid. I'll behave, said Joan. Now just you behave. I'll only be gone 2 weeks, so I expect the house to still be standing when I get back. Be careful and just remember that I love you more than anything. With that, Joan grabs Richard's head and pulls his face to hers for a long, deep kiss. Come on. We haven't got all day to sit here and watch you two slobbering all over each other. We've got a plane to catch and men to chase. Richard and Joan both turn from their kiss and look at Joan's younger sister Brenda sitting in the van making a kissy face at them. Joan mouths the word, which, and Richard just rolls his eyes. By Han, I love you too. Joan gets into the van next to her sister and blows Richard a kiss just as the driver closes the door. The driver gets in. They pull away and leave Richard standing in the driveway waving at them, muttering, "Damn, I thought they would never leave." He turns and starts back toward the house thinking about his marvelous plans. I've got a hell of a lot of work to do over the next few days, but boy is it going to be worth every aching muscle. When she sees what I've done to the bedroom, she's going to jump on me right there without ever unpacking. We're going to break in that new mattress for the whole weekend again and again and again. God, I am going to be sore, but it will be worth it. Well, let's get to work. Once in the house, Richard goes to the kitchen and calls his son. Hello, comes Mark's deep, slow growl over the phone. What time is it? What day is it? Wake up and grab your stuff. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's almost 11 o'clock, Richard barks back. Is that AM or PM? It's obvious from the slurring and the deepness of his voice that he's just waking up, but Dad keeps at him. It's Sunday. Don't think. Just be here by noon. Get some coffee, eat something and get your butt over here. We've got to get everything moved out today and the painting prep work done before dinner. K is the only reply before the line goes dead. Richard hangs up and goes into the garage and gets the boxes of supplies that will be needed for the prep work. With everything in hand, he starts upstairs. Richard has had this planned for months. While Joan is out sunning herself on a cruise ship in the Caribbean with her sister and 2 friends from work, Richard and Mark are going to completely strip the master bedroom down to the bare walls and refurnish the entire room. This includes new paint, new carpet, and all new furniture. Joan has had her heart set on a bedroom she found in a magazine called Colonial Homes that she saw one day at the dentist's office. She borrowed the magazine and cut out the pictures and pinned them to the bulletin board in the kitchen. This has been her dream. It has also been a constant reminder to Richard to get on the stick. So when she gets back, her dream will have come true. Last month, the furniture and carpet were ordered. 2 weeks ago, the paint was purchased. Last week, Mark finally agreed to help out. Everything is scheduled to arrive and be set up over the next few days. By Wednesday, everything should be done, and Joan knows nothing about it. It will be Richard's 30th anniversary present to her. He makes one more trip to the garage to get the pile of boxes that all of the drawers and closets' contents will go into temporarily. He starts unloading the dresser contents into the boxes. Next, he unloads the armoire, then the nightstands. He takes the pictures off of the walls and the shoes off of the floor, stuffs them into boxes, and takes everything into the spare bedroom. Well, that's the easy part, he says to nobody in particular, obviously because there is nobody in particular there to hear him. Then he turns his attention to the closets. One of the major selling features of this house when they looked at it way back when they were first married was the 2 huge walk-in closets that sat on either side of the hall that led from the bedroom to the master bath. Each was about 20 feet deep by 8 feet across. They're huge. They're small rooms without windows. After 30 years, they are pretty full of stuff. The reason they are so full is because Richard is a pack rat. And after they were married, Joan picked up the habit and also became a pack rat. Now, being a pack rat has its advantages sometimes, but other times it's just crazy, bordering on obsessive. They keep just about everything. Richard keeps odd things like screws, old tools, books, car parts, and just about everything that someday we might need. Joan has also learned that behavior and has kept every school paper and grade report that Mark ever had, brochures from places they visited over the years, and more craft magazines, sewing supplies, and kitchen gadgets that would fill 5-yard sales. Every usable space is just filled with useful stuff. And the 2 closets in the bedroom are no exception. With a sigh, he heads into his own closet. Almost an hour later, he has everything boxed up and moved into the spare bedroom. Then he turns his attention to Joan's closet. He just stands at the entrance and feels completely overwhelmed. "Hey, I brought you lunch," Mark says as he enters the room and promptly trips over the pile of unfilled boxes. "Shit." Richard jumps. "Knock or something to let me know you're there." All we need is for you to give me a damned heart attack. Then you'll have to call your mother and tell her you killed me. Sorry. Here's your sandwich and soda. For the next 15 minutes, they both sit on the bed and eat. Here's what I want you to do, Dad says while stuffing his face. I'll box up the small stuff, and you can take the larger stuff from Mom's closet over to the spare bedroom. Afterwards, we've got to get all this furniture down to the garage and into the truck. It's going to Goodwill later. K is all Mark says. Short answers are Mark's main method of communication. With lunch finished, they get up and start in on Joan's closet. Richard packs up the clothes on the shelves, the shoes and other clothes on the floor, the pile of stuffed animals in the corner, and the miscellaneous small odds and ends around the room. Mark starts taking the pile of shoe boxes, boxes of books, and luggage to the spare room. Mark grabs a small case from the far corner of the top shelf that was hidden behind a bunch of shoe boxes and says, "Hey, what's this?" Richard looks at it and says, "That's a cosmetics case that went to the set of luggage that we got from your grandmother when we cleaned out her house after she died. I didn't know we even had any of it anymore." He takes the case and looks at it, saying to Mark, "Look, they don't make stuff like this anymore. It's real 1950s, solid, indestructible, beige and boring. It went with the 8-piece Samsonite luggage set that was old when we got it. I think we gave it to Goodwill years ago. I wonder why we still have this piece." Richard tries to open it, but both latches are locked. "Well, just put it with the other junk in the spare room." It takes a good 2 hours, but the closet is finally empty. After a short break, they start taking apart the furniture and trudging it downstairs and into the garage. By the time the room is completely empty, they are both tired and hungry. Since it was getting close to dinner time, Dad gives Mark $20 and sends him to Luigi's to get a pizza. There is already beer in the refrigerator, so dinner is all set. After pizza and a couple beers, Mark says he has to go because Brandy has planned something or another, but he can't remember exactly what. He just knows that he had better be home by 7 o'clock. His wife has a bit of a temper and Mark has learned to not stir it up. 5 minutes later, he's gone. Richard cleans up from dinner. How hard is that? Pizza box and napkins in the trash and beer cans in the recycling bin. Soon he's back in the bedroom starting the prep work needed before painting can start. By 9 o'clock, the taping, plastering, and sanding is complete. The outlet covers are removed, and the tarps are laid out to protect the carpet that will be in the trash in 2 days. But that's the way Richard is. Sunday's work is done. He gets another beer from the refrigerator and plops himself in his lounge chair in front of the TV, and after only one sip of the beer, he's sound asleep. Monday, October 4th, 2010. Mark actually shows up at 7 o'clock as he promised. This time he rings the bell to prevent any heart attacks, and Richard stumbles from the lounge chair to the door. "Damn, you're early." "Actually, I am not. I said I'd be here at 7, and here it is 7. Where's breakfast?" That's the Mark everybody knows and loves. Always hungry. Breakfast is poured into the bowl, milk added, and they eat. "Today is nothing but painting," Richard explained. "First we do the ceiling and then the walls. I'll cut in everything up high, and you can do around the floor. That'll probably take until noon, then we start with the rollers. I hope Brandy doesn't have anything planned for you today because I'll need you to stay here until we're done. And it doesn't matter how late. We've got to be done today. No problem. She'll be over at her mother's helping her do something or another. She won't be back until late." So begins a very long day of one of the most boring jobs any homeowner can do, painting. Monday ends much like Sunday did. Richard, sound asleep, with a beer, in front of the TV. But this time he took a shower first. Tuesday, October 5th, 2010. 6 a.m. is pretty damned early. But there at the door is the carpet installation crew. Well, actually a crew of 2. There's nothing for Richard to do but stay out of their way. And besides, he doesn't speak Spanish. Breakfast today is the same fare as yesterday, delicious cold cereal. It's incredible how fast a job can get done when someone knows what they're doing. The 2 guys are finished and gone by 10 a.m. Since the furniture won't be delivered until noon, Richard goes about sorting through the stuff in the spare bedroom looking for anything obvious that can be thrown out. Once again, he picks up the little beige cosmetics case and looks at it. It seems heavier than it should be, so he shakes it. There's something inside, and like he always does, he gets a bit curious and starts fiddling with the latches. He goes to the bathroom and sits on the toilet and works the locks with a paper clip. After just a couple minutes of making no headway opening the case, the doorbell rings. So he sets the case down next to the sink and goes to answer the door. It's the furniture delivery people. "Come on in, and I'll show you where everything goes." Again, Richard knows to get out of their way and just let them do their jobs. When all of the furniture is in and the people are gone, Richard starts the arduous task of moving everything back from the spare bedroom. He gives up around midnight and heads off to the lounge chair, the TV, and a beer. Wednesday, October 6, 2010. Richard sleeps in today. At 9 a.m., he takes the old furniture to Goodwill and stops at Denny's for breakfast. By noon, he starts on the final bit of cleanup. When everything is back in the bedroom, he does the one last item on the list, and that is to hang a large banner on the wall over the bed that simply says surprise. Taking one final look around the room before he calls it a day, Richard finds a foot-long gouge in the paint along one wall that obviously was done when the movers moved the dresser into the room. Damn, that needs to be touched up. He gets the can of paint and a brush and spends a few minutes adding the final touch to the room. That's done. Now just clean up, take a shower, and have dinner. He goes into the bathroom to wash the paintbrush out. He's in a hurry to get something to eat and sets the brush on the side of the sink. It's not balanced properly and falls to the floor. Shit. Which is a reasonable thing to say when you get paint all over the floor. He gets a rag and looks down for the brush and sees that it didn't hit the floor. It fell on top of the little cosmetics case. So he picks the case up and starts to rub the paint off, but instead is rubbing it into the faux leather top. Turpentine, that's what I need. And downstairs he heads with the case. A few strokes with a turpentine dampen rag, and the case looks as good as 1950s new. He puts the paint and supplies away in the garage and comes back into the kitchen. You know what curiosity did to the cat? Richard was still wondering what's in the case. Maybe he should take a clue from the cat rhyme. But instead back out into the garage, he goes to the workbench and gets a big gallon jar off of the shelf. It's full of old keys. Just one of the many jars of useful stuff he has amassed over the years. He dumps it out and starts sorting through them looking for an old square key that he remembers fit the Samsonite luggage. Damned if there isn't one in here, he again says to nobody. Now, sitting at the kitchen table, Richard puts the key into the left lock, turns it, and the latch pops open. Then he puts the key into the right lock, turns, and it too pops opens. Lifting the lid, Richard doesn't know what to expect, but he's just like a little kid with a new box filled with toys. Each item inside will be a new adventure. But the adventure in this little beige Samsonite cosmetic case is something that Richard could have never in a million years expected. On top is a large bulging manila envelope. He pulls it out and looks at the front. It's addressed to Joan. The return address is an A. Stevens from Seattle, Washington. Looking closely at the postmark, he sees that it is dated September 15th, 1991. That's almost 20 years ago. And it's unopened. He sets the envelope aside on the table and looks underneath. Now on top of the case is a blue pile of cloth. Richard picks it up and sees it fall out into a bikini. He smiles at it, thinking of what Joan would look like wearing it. After setting the bikini on top of the manila envelope, he pulls the case closer and looks down into it. What he sees on top makes his heart skip a beat. His jaw drops and all of his senses just seem to shut down. He's staring down into the case at a 3x5 picture of Joan and some man sitting at a dinner table kissing. Time passes. It seems like an eternity, but is probably only a few seconds. Mechanically, he reaches in and picks up the picture. Now his hands start to tremble. His mouth is dry. He sees the picture, but his mind can't make any sense of it. Why is my wife kissing some man? And who the hell is he? Before he knows it, his Denny's $6.95 breakfast is rapidly coming back up. After just making it to the bathroom, he sits on the floor in front of the toilet wondering what in the hell is going on. Somehow he's on his feet and splashing cold water on his face and neck. He walks back into the kitchen and stands for the longest time, staring at the tableau in front of him. Kitchen table with beige cosmetics case on it and a manila envelope beside it with a blue bikini on top. On the floor is his crushed heart. Richard sits back down and takes the pile of photos out of the case and places them on the table. Yes, that's Joan. Her head is turned to the man and her lips are on his, but her eyes are on whoever is taking the picture. The man is a mirror image of Joan. Without thinking, he turns the photo over and looks at the next. It is an old Polaroid of the same man standing next to a door without a shirt. Turning to the next, he sees the same man in a close-up of his face. Next, he's lying on a bed asleep. Next picture is him from behind nude. Next picture sitting on a bed with his legs crossed, nude. Looking at all of the pictures, Richard sees that they are all of the same man. Some at a formal banquet dinner, some on the beach next to a fire, one waving in an airport, and the last is of him driving a car and laughing. The more intimate ones are old Polaroids, and the rest look to be 35mm stock. He puts them down and just stares at them wondering, what the hell? Richard looks into the case and sees a woman's white silk scarf wrapped around something and tied with a red ribbon. He takes it out and unties the ribbon. What he finds are a handful of letters. They are all written to Joan and addressed to her at work. They have postmarks from 1989 to 1991. He takes the one with the earliest date, pulls out the letter and starts to read. June 22nd, 1989. My dearest Joan, it's only been 1 month, but God, how I miss you. I miss your beautiful voice. I miss your tender touch. I miss your sweet, soft lips. But most of all, I miss the warmth of your body next to me in bed. God, I love you. Did I say I miss you? It only whetted my appetite for you when we talked on Tuesday. I'll do exactly as you wish and only call you at work and only send my letters there too. I don't want any unhappiness for you. Just so long as you still want me, I am a happy man. I've enclosed one of my business cards so you can have my office address and phone number so you can call or write me as often as you want. San Diego is everything I ever wanted, except that you aren't here with me. My position in this medical consortium will allow me to see patients and at the same time pursue some research in areas of interest. They are even encouraging me to write some scholarly papers. I couldn't have asked for a better place to be. As soon as I am settled here, I'll need to come back to see my parents to help sort through a lot of the stuff we left behind. When I do, I want us to be together. I'll take whatever I can get. A minute, an hour, a whole day. I just want to make love with you again, and again, and again. I'll never get enough of you. I'll call you to let you know when we can be together again. Please think of me sometime at night, and I'll think of you. Maybe our thoughts will link up in the cosmos somewhere, and we can be one again. With all my love, Tim. Holy shit, Richard says at the top of his lungs. That which had a lover. He throws the letter on the floor and just sits staring in space. His body is numb, but his mind is racing at top speed with 1,000 questions, and they don't have answers. The only way to know what's going on is to go over everything in this damned case, he thinks. Then maybe I'll know whether I've got a life anymore or not. He picks everything up and takes it into the living room and sets it into the middle of the floor. He then drops onto his bottom next to it. Just look at all of that junk. Joan is just as much of a pack rat as I am. He starts pulling things out of the case. The first thing out is a blue felt jewelry box. Inside is a gold heart-shaped locket on a gold chain. I've seen that before, he thinks. He quickly gathers the pictures and scans through them until he finds the one at the fancy dinner. Joan is wearing a V-necked black dress, and the locket is right there above her cleavage. He pulls out 2 napkins, and one has "I love you" written on it. This is not Joan's handwriting, he thinks. The other has a telephone number on it. Out comes an invitation to an awards presentation in Chicago for November 12th, 1990 that says, Dr. Timothy Dahl and guest. Somebody scratched through the "and guest" part and wrote above it, "My love." There is a dried red rose in a plastic bag, Dr. Dahl's business card, a small glass Waterford crystal figurine of a whale's tail coming out of the water. There are brochures from the Greenbrier Hotel, another from the Plaza Hotel in New York, a swizzle stick from Antonio's restaurant, a hotel menu from the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, lots of matchbooks from different hotels and motels, some nearby and some far away. There are receipts from hotels, airplane boarding pass stubs, a wine bottle cork, a hotel room key, a pair of men's sunglasses, a man's handkerchief with lipstick on it, a California road map with the California Coast Highway highlighted, a black velvet sleeping mask, a 1988 wallet year calendar with 2 days a month, each month circled, a couple of seashells, several pens and pads of paper from various hotels, some 35mm film strip negatives, and a rolled up, empty tube of KY jelly. What the hell does all of this mean? Richard grabs the large manila envelope and tears it open. Inside, he finds another collection of letters and pictures, all bound with a rubber band. The pictures are of Joan. Some are Polaroids. The first Polaroid is of Joan naked from head to toe, striking a pose on a balcony. The second is a nude close-up of Joan showing her from the waist up with a particularly beautiful smile. Richard's stomach is starting to erupt again after seeing Joan naked in these pictures, but it settles down before he has to rush to the bathroom. The rest are of Joan and this man at the formal dinner, Joan looking over a cityscape at dusk, Joan in the passenger side of a moving car laughing, and Joan on the beach wearing the bikini that is now setting next to the case. It's not getting any easier seeing these pictures either. Richard looks at the letters and they are all addressed to Tim Dahl in San Diego and postmarked from 1989 to 1991. He takes the one with the earliest date, pulls out the letter and starts to read. June 25th, 1989. Tim, my love. You can't imagine the pain I felt when you told me that you were moving to California. I died right there. I can't let you go. I love you too much. I know that the move is important to you and your family, but I am a selfish witch and don't want you to ever leave. I know you said that we would still be able to be together from time to time, but I want you always and forever, not from time to time. I can't let you go. Please hurry up and come back east, and I'll drop everything to be with you. I am yours to do with what you want. Just let me feel your body next to mine. Please hurry back. I am counting the days until we're together again. I love you now and forever. Joan, this is too much. I can't think straight. I've got to get some air. No, I've got to get something to drink. Shit, I don't know what to do. I can't lose Joan. I love her. I've always loved her. But she loves someone else. Maybe I've already lost her. Oh no. Please God, help me. I want to just lie down and die. Oh shit, shit, shit. Richard begins crying. He's sobbing deep in his chest and soon curls up in a ball on the floor and rocks himself to sleep. Thursday, October 7th, 2010. Why can't I get a cell phone connection? Well duh, we're on a ship at sea, dummy. Brenda is being her usual witchy self with her sister this morning. Why do you want to call home anyway? Rich will just say he's doing something boring like going to yard sales or cleaning the gutters. You're here to have fun and enjoy yourself and not think about home. Now, go over to that cute young man at the bar and get me another screwdriver and forget about home. You know you can be a major pain in the butt sometimes. I'm going to go up to the communications office and see if I can get a message to Rich. And off she stomps, all the while mumbling, which under her breath. The communications office has a series of computers that the passengers can use to access the internet and their email, among other things. There is also a phone for guest use. Joan picks up the phone and punches in her home phone number. Good, it's ringing. But there's no answer, and when the message machine picks up, she decides she had too much to say to leave a message. So she tries Rich's cell phone. It's not turned on. So Joan logs onto one of the computers and sends Rich an email telling him about all of the fun and excitement of the last few days. She even tells about Brenda hooking up with some other passenger and being AWOL overnight. Just like her. Sadly, without talking to Rich, she just wanders back to the pool. Darkness can be a frightening thing. The darkness of sleep gives way to the light of day. There is happiness in the light. Usually that is except right now in Richard's heart. It's as dark as the sleep he just awoke from. The pain from yesterday's tour through Joan's past with her lover was excruciating, and the pain is starting to rear its ugly head again. But Richard has to get up to face whatever this day has to offer. It'll probably be bad, but it still has to be faced. Sitting up on the living room floor, Richard realizes that he slept on the floor all night and awoke among the contents of the little cosmetics case. He is stiff and hurting in places that he didn't know he had. He gets up and stumbles into the bathroom for his morning pee. He returns to the living room in a daze and looks down at the mess on the floor. His eyes rest on the nude picture of Joan. He says to himself, that's from her, babe, period. Richard and Joan have known each other since high school. Richard was mostly invisible to everyone in school. To everyone but Joan, that is. She saw him and liked what she saw. What she saw was a young man of average height, 5 feet 10 inches, and weight, dirty blonde hair, glasses, and a dry, quick wit. Everybody would say that he was not handsome, just average looking. To everyone else, Richard, or Rich as she called him, was average. But to Joan he was remarkable. She loved him from their first date in their senior year. Now Joan was almost as average as Richard. She was short, about 5 feet 2 inches, wore glasses, and had wavy dark brown hair that cascaded over her shoulders. Joan was, and still is, somewhat overweight. Her weight may be what turned off a lot of potential boyfriends, but Rich didn't see her as fat. He thought she was soft. Her heart-shaped face and sharp nose made her face seem too small for the rest of her body, and that made her look all the heavier. But the most remarkable single thing that Richard just couldn't get enough of was Joan's beautiful eyes. They were sparkling green with flecks of gold. When they looked into his eyes, they could touch his soul. When Joan first looked into Richard's eyes, something erupted inside him. They dated continuously throughout their senior year and on into college. They both went to the local community college for 2 years and on to a nearby university for the remaining 2. Richard studied computer science and Joan laboratory sciences. They graduated in June and were married the last Sunday in October. Richard went to work for the local county government and Joan started as a lab technologist at a nearby hospital. Within a few years, both were moving up in their jobs. Richard was made the head of a group of programmers and Joan was promoted to manager of the hospital laboratory. And they bought their first house, a fixer-upper, but at least something they could afford. Both wanted children, but also wanted to be as financially stable as possible before they started a family, and soon they were as ready as they could be. Their son Mark was born 5 years after they were married. Joan took a short maternity leave and then had Mark enrolled in the hospital's daycare center. She could see him at lunch, and anytime she just felt the need to be with him. Mark stayed at the daycare center until he was old enough to start public school. During that time, Joan entered what Richard lovingly called her babe period. At that time, Joan started going to Weight Watchers and lost a large amount of weight, maybe 50 pounds or more. She was soon around 115, 120 pounds. Also, she started going to a tanning salon and looked like she just stepped from the beach. A new wardrobe followed, and soon Joan looked like a real babe. The weight loss did another amazing thing. It made her body fit. Whenever Richard and Joan went shopping at the mall, heads would turn to look at her. All male. At her sister's wedding, several of the somewhat inebriated groomsmen were crawling all over themselves to dance with her and bring her drinks. She loved the attention, but never did anything to give Richard any heartburn. At that time, Richard would muse to himself, "What did I do to deserve such a beautiful lady? Just shut up and enjoy, you fool." Joan started the end of her babe period when she got sick one August. Not physically sick, but emotionally sick. She said that work was overly demanding and depressing, and she was physically drained. She missed a lot of days from work, and she stayed in bed a lot when she was home. Richard took Mark to daycare before going to his own work and took care of the house and Mark in the evening. Joan was out of it for a few weeks and then slowly started to become her old self again. One day after work, she came rushing into the house with big wide eyes and tears streaming down her face. Richard was setting the table for dinner when she grabbed him around the neck and sobbed into his ear. "I am so sorry. I missed your birthday. I was so selfish with my own problems that I completely forgot about you. Please forgive me." Richard smiled at her and said simply, "You can make it up to me this weekend, if you get my drift." Soon after, Joan started gaining weight again. Within a few months, she was back at her pre-babe period weight. Nobody turned their head to look at her anymore, and she didn't get the extra attention from the male population. But Joan and Richard were happy, and besides, Richard didn't really care about the weight. He loved her. Besides, he thought being voluptuous was sexy. But now Richard is standing over the cosmetics case contents on the living room floor, staring down at Joan's naked body in the picture. "No matter how much this hurts, I've got to find out what this is all about, and to find out if we have a future together anymore," he says out loud in the empty room. He sits down and picks up the next letter in sequence addressed to Joan. August 19th, 1989. Darling Joan, our time this past week was wondrous. I can still smell your perfume and hear your moans. All of my senses were on overdrive on the plane ride back home. I am surprised that the woman sitting next to me didn't pick up on how worked up I was. The trip was agonizing because I was getting further and further from you. I don't care what you say. Just because I am in California and you're in Virginia, our love will not lessen one bit. We will be together physically as often as I can arrange it, but we will always be together spiritually. Nothing can keep our love apart. And speaking of love, just thinking about last Thursday at the Marriott will keep pushing me for the rest of my life. The third time we made love was the most tender and sensual experience of my life. I thought I was too exhausted to continue, but when you looked into my soul and said those three magic words, "I love you," I knew I could do anything. It was slow and tender. I prayed to God to never let this feeling stop. I was sore, I was sweaty, and I was exhausted. But I was with you, and that's all that mattered. I love you so much. The first time that day was a hell of a surprise. I have always fantasized about a woman ravishing me, but you made my fantasy come true in a big way. By the way, I had to throw out that new dress shirt because it was just torn to shreds. You can do that anytime you want. God, what an experience. When I finally recovered my senses, God, what a day. I never knew that love could be like this. With all my heart. Tim. He is describing my Joan. This is exactly the way we spent some weekends when we were first married. She could be dynamite in bed, aggressive one minute and tender the next. She has always been every man's dream. But she's doing this with somebody else. It's not me. It's some other man, her damned lover. A lover I never knew she had. How could she do this to me? Shit, I could just kill both of them. Easy there. You don't want to kill her. God. I am starting to talk to myself. I am pathetic. Grabbing the next letter addressed to Joan's lover, Richard starts to read. August 21st, 1989. My love, it took me 3 days to recover from your visit, but I'd do everything all over again and more. I do it a million times as long as it's with you. I am so sorry that we could only have the one day together. That's why I tried to make it as memorable as possible. Was it for you? It sure was for me. The next time we're together, we need to pace ourselves. I can't wait. When are you coming back? It's all I could think about, waiting for you to arrive. When you shut the hotel room door, all hell broke loose in my head. I didn't plan it. It just happened, and I am extremely happy it did. Want to do it again sometime? A lot of that was tears of joy. I was crying because I never wanted it to end, but I knew that it would. When I looked up into your beautiful face, I could see your love for me, and that made me cry all the more. God, I can't get enough of your love. When driving home that day, I was thinking about my crazy, mixed-up life. On one hand, I've got the perfect marriage, home, child, and career. On the other hand, I've got you. I have two men in my life that I love more than life itself. When I am with you, nothing else exists. When I am with my husband, nothing else exists. I can't imagine living without either of you. I must have both of you. I will not do anything to hurt either of us or our families, but I just can't come to grips with everything. I've got two men that I love equally and will do anything for. Either I am the worst woman in the world or the luckiest. I am so confused. You will always be in my heart. You will always be in my life. I want you always in my bed. I can't live without you. You are my love. You are my lover. You are my life. Joan. Jesus Christ. She's confused? I am totally confused. She says that she loves me and some a-hole at the same time. Is she nuts? Or am I missing something here? What's next? Is she going to say that she wants to have his baby? Oh shit. What if she already did? What if Mark is really his son? The only thing I can do is just keep reading. For the rest of the day, Richard reads each of the letters. Occasionally he gets up and paces the room or walks outside for some fresh air. A couple times he just sits and cries. Life as he knows it has come to an abrupt halt, and he's still reeling with the knowledge that his lovely wife of 30 years has kept her lover a complete secret from him all these years. He turns his attention to the other papers in the box and sees the evidence of their rendezvous in various hotels and motels and of the lab conventions that she supposedly attended. There are receipts and matchbooks from some places they stayed. All the stuff of a typical pack rat. When he finishes and is just about to put everything back into the cosmetics case, he notices another letter setting along the front edge of the case that he hadn't seen before. It's different in that it's addressed to Joan, but comes from the same A. Stevens that the manila envelope is from. He reads, August 14th, 1991. Joan, my name is Anna Stevens and I am Tim's sister. I found your letter to Tim and read it and was amazed to say the least. I could never have imagined that Tim would be having an affair. But it's obvious from your words that it's been going on for some time now, probably since before he moved to California, and that you love him deeply and he loves you too. I have a bit of sympathy for you for my own personal reasons that I won't go into, and that is why I am writing this letter now. Tim died in a car crash last week. Some kid in a stolen car ran a stop sign and hit Tim's car in the driver's side door at 90 miles an hour. He died instantly. We had his funeral yesterday. I've enclosed one of the service cards for you. I have been helping Ellen get Tim's affairs in order, and will soon be sorting through his personal belongings at home and his office. I want to save Ellen any more heartache and will try very hard to prevent her from knowing about you. If I find any more letters or any other personal mementos of yours, I will gather them up and send them back to you. Please understand that I harbor no ill will toward you, but I will do everything in my power to prevent your affair with Tim ever coming to light. Please don't try to communicate with me or any of Tim's family. I am truly sorry for your loss. Please pray for Tim and his family. Anna Stevens. Some of the handwritten words of the letter are smeared. It looks like the letter is tear-stained. It was once crumpled up, but smoothed out before being put back into the envelope. The service card is missing. This explains a lot, Richard thinks. This explains why Joan was so depressed that month. Her lover just died. That must have been devastating for her. Obviously it was, because she spent almost 3 weeks in bed. She missed her husband's birthday too. How could someone say that they love two people at the same time? I just can't imagine it. How can you give 100% of yourself to two people at the same time? Don't you end up giving 50% of yourself to each? And what about the lies she told? To keep her lover's existence from me, she had to lie to me, and lie a lot. She had to lie about where she was going on the days she met him. She lied to me when she said she was going on her lab convention trips. She lied to me when she said that she loved me and only me. She obviously didn't lie to her lover about me. He wrote that he didn't want to upset our family. She just lied to me. What else did she lie about? When we made love, did she think of him? That's the same as lying. Did she lie to me about Mark? Is he my son? It's all bullshit. The lies and the deceit that I now know about makes me question everything she ever said. What was lies and what wasn't? I can't tell. How will I ever know for sure? It's all bullshit. Richard now knows as much as can be learned from the contents of the little cosmetics case. Joan had an affair with a married doctor from the hospital for more than 3 years. He can't tell exactly when it started, but it appears to have started about the time he came to work at the hospital. It may be before Mark was born, and it may have been shortly afterwards. It ended abruptly with his death in August of 1991. They met at hotels around the area and sometimes in Joan's office at work. After he moved to San Diego, they met every few months either at a hotel near home when he would come back to visit his parents, or they went away together for a few days. On their out-of-town rendezvous, Joan would say that she was going to a laboratory conference. They went away to Roanoke, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and possibly other places. Nobody else knew about them. They said that they loved the other very much. Both seemed conflicted about their relationship and how it could affect their families, but neither of them wanted to break it off. Richard looks to the front window, and it's dark outside. The clock says 10 p.m. He has been there all day reading and thinking, I need to take a walk. So outside he goes into the night air, confused, hurt, and alone, not even bothering to lock the door behind him. Friday, October 8th, 2010. Damn it, where is he? When the answering machine picks up, Joan leaves a message this time. Rich, where are you? I tried to call yesterday, but your cell phone was off, and I didn't want to leave a message because I've just got too much to tell you, so I sent you an email. Are you there, hon? Please pick up. I'll call again this evening. Damn it. Be there, or I won't come home at all. I'll just stay on this ship with all of these cute young guys and go round and round the Caribbean. Please be there. I miss you and I love you. This is the longest time I've ever been out of touch with Rich since we've been married, Joan thinks. I am beginning to get a little worried. If I don't talk to him tonight, I'll call Mark and see what's up. Now let's go see if I can find that witchy sister of mine. Huh. Joan. Hon. Where are you? Oh shit. It's the answering machine. Richard listens to the message as it's being recorded. She says she loves me and misses me. Yeah, right. Liar. Witch. He falls out of the lounge chair where he slept and stumbles into the bathroom. While peeing, he hears Joan's voice in his head over and over. I miss you and I love you. I love you too, you two-timing witch, he answers back. But I can't ever believe another word you say. You hurt me. I can't go on like this. I've got to figure out what to do. Okay, so that's my job for today. Figure out what I am going to do. Now that that's settled, Richard shakes and looks at himself in the bathroom mirror. God, he says out loud. You look like death warmed over. You haven't showered or shaved in 3 days, and I don't remember eating since Denny's. That's the first order of things. So after a hot shower and shave and a hearty breakfast of cold cereal, Richard sits down at the kitchen table and starts thinking about the future. An hour later, he has the outline of plan and gets a pad of paper and starts making a list of things he needs to do. First order of things is to see if Mark is his son or not. He goes into the den and opens up his laptop and finds a site offering a home DNA testing kit and orders it to be shipped by overnight mail. The entire list will take a few days to accomplish, but Joan won't be back until next Friday and he has a week, so there's time. I've just got to keep from thinking too much and getting depressed. I'll just do every chore around here that I've been putting off. That should keep my mind occupied today. And he begins. Now this is getting to be a bit worrisome. I can't get hold of Rich and he isn't returning my calls. I tried 2 times today. I even left a message for Mark to check on his father and call me back. I hope something hasn't happened. Joan, stop worrying. He's just probably gone fishing or out drinking with his friends at work or shacked up with that brunette down the street. Brenda has always had a way of comforting her sister. You aren't making me feel better, you know, so just shut up or I'll come over there and shove that pina colada umbrella up your butt. When it comes to Richard, don't mess with Joan. Saturday, October 9th, 2010. I've got to spend a perfectly good Saturday morning babysitting my old man. If Mom hadn't left me a message last night, I'd be in bed now, all warm and cozy next to Brandy. Mark can be cranky at times. Knock, knock. Okay, old man, open up. I know you're in there. Now where in the hell is he? If he isn't in the backyard, I am going home and back to bed. Why don't you answer the door? Mark said to his father. Because I am in the backyard trimming a damn tree? Are you blind as well as stupid? Why don't you just shut up and get me a bottle of water? And pretty damned angry too, I might add. Give me a break, will ya? Mark goes inside and gets his dad a bottle of water. Richard takes a break and downs half of the bottle of water. Hey, go out and see if we have any mail. Okay, anything to get away from you. Mark brings the mail around back, and in the pile is an overnight mail envelope for Richard. Richard goes into the house and opens the envelope and the kit and quickly reads the instructions. Hey, Mark, come here, he yells. What now? Comes Mark's not-so-pleasant reply. I just got this testing kit for the new strain of the swine flu virus and want to test you. You gave it to me last year, and no way in hell I am going to go through that again. That was a miserable few days. So open up and let me swab the inside of your mouth, and I'll send it off to be tested. If it comes back positive, then you and I should get the new flu shot. Of course, Richard was dishing out a load of bullshit. This was really the DNA test that would prove if Mark was his son or not. And if not, well, he hasn't quite thought that far yet. Would you please call Mom back and let her know that you aren't dead? She called me last night and asked me to check on you to make sure you weren't laying in a gutter somewhere. Just call her and get me off the hook, okay? With another pleasant visit over with, Mark heads out the door. Richard finishes up with the testing kit, swabbing the inside of his mouth and sealing everything in the return kit. Since it's Saturday and there's no mail the rest of the weekend, it can wait until Monday to be mailed back. Well, back to work. He spends the rest of the day and most of the night working around the house, anything to keep his mind off of his troubles and Joan. Before going to bed, Richard has the first substantial meal since he found about his cheating wife. The pizza delivery boy drops off a large deluxe pizza. That and a six-pack of beer is the first decent food he's had in a week. That didn't come back up. Sunday, October 10th, 2010. Early in the morning, Richard calls Joan's cell phone. He leaves a voicemail message that goes something like this. "I'm okay. I'll try to call you on Monday from work. Don't worry. I am fine. Have fun with your little boy toys, but don't bring back anything communicable." The rest of the day he spends at the park watching the ducks and the happy families. Monday, October 11th, 2010. Richard is up and out for work at the usual time, but today work will not be the usual fare. On his way to work, he stops by the post office and drops off the overnight mail envelope with the DNA test samples. At work, he goes directly to the Human Resources office and applies for retirement. He's been eligible for a couple years now, but never planned to retire until Joan could retire along with him. Those plans are down the toilet now. Afterwards, he stops and sees his bean counter of a boss and tells him that he's retiring effective immediately and to take the next 2 weeks from his annual leave. Before he leaves for the last time, he places a phone call to one of his oldest and most trusted friends, and also his attorney, Luke Pauley. "Hey guy, long time no see. What's been happening in the Alexander household? Look, can I come over to see you today? It's kinda important and I need some of your time and a lot of your advice." "Sure, anything for my godson's cranky old man. How about 1 o'clock? Good. See you then." An hour later, and a couple handshake goodbyes at the office, and Richard's 30 years with the county government are history. And sadly, everything that he's accumulated over those years fits into just 2 boxes. Richard stops at the bank and takes care of his checking and saving accounts, dividing the money into a new checking account in just his name. He also takes his passport and a few important papers out of their safety deposit box. The bank is also able to help him with his credit cards. He sets up one for himself and takes his name off of the one that Joan uses. Then he writes a check to pay off the balance. Richard then stops at the insurance agency to change the beneficiary on his life insurance from Joan and Mark to just Mark. He changes the insurance for Joan's car to her name only and his truck to his name only. Once the finances are in order, he shows up at Luke Pauley's office. "Rich, we've got to get together more often, dinner and some beers, or something with you and Joni. I can't have you making an appointment to just come shoot the shit. It makes me look bad. Hey, what's up? You look like you've got a problem. What can I do to help?" "Luke, I need your advice. Tell me about the statute of limitations on divorces." "What are you talking about?" "The statute of limitations applies to crimes and the time that can elapse before they can't be prosecuted anymore, but that just doesn't really apply in a divorce case. Every state is different in the way that they handle divorce laws. Some states consider a marriage to be a contract which can be entered and dissolved at will. Other states still have laws on the books that say the dissolution of a marriage can only come about when a crime has been committed. Adultery is considered a crime in a lot of states. Why are you asking?" "Luke, if Joan did something a whole lot of years ago and I didn't find out about it until now, has too much time passed for me to do anything about it? I mean, are there a statute of limitations on adultery?" "Adultery? Bullshit. No way could Joni commit adultery. It's just not in her nature. What's going on, Rich? Tell me as a friend before the lawyer in me kicks in." For the next hour, Richard dumps everything he knows on his friend. At the end, he even puts the cosmetics case on the desk. "What you told me is unbelievable. I can't imagine any better couple than you and Joni. There has to be another explanation. What do you want to do?" "I feel like the woman I married has cheated me. The only thing I can think of now is for you to write up divorce papers. I don't know what's going to happen when she finds out about them, but at this point, I don't really care. I just want away from all of this shit, all this pain. It's not too late, is it? She did this almost 20 years ago, and there is no statute of limitations on her crime. As your friend, I say to talk to her and listen to her side of the story. Get into counseling. Do anything you have to save your marriage. Just work it out. You two are meant to be together. As your lawyer, I'll write up the divorce papers as you ask, but I won't like it. I'd recommend a 50-50 split since this state has no-fault divorce laws. Mark's too old to be an issue, and there isn't anything else to consider. Accept my will. Luke, I want you to change it so my beneficiary is Mark and take Joan out altogether. Again, as a friend, I say talk to her and maybe get some help, but your lawyer will make the changes. Come back Wednesday and I'll have everything ready for you to sign. What are your plans now?" I don't have anything concrete yet. I want to be alone for a while to think. Maybe after some time when the shock and pain has worn off I can talk to her. But for now I just can't face her. I may be a shit, but that's what I've got to do. I'll call you when I've settled somewhere. Richard is not able to sleep in the newly redecorated bedroom. So later that night he grabs a beer, turns on the television, and settles into the lounge chair for another night of restless dreams. He thinks about the next few days. Sleep doesn't come easy. Tuesday, October 12th, 2010. Today is another day, and there is another message from Joan on the answering machine. I need time to get everything set up properly. If everything is done today, then it's over. I just can't be here when she comes home. Today or tomorrow at the latest, and it's done. He doesn't bother to call her back. There just isn't anything more to say. Wednesday, October 13th, 2010. Richard has his new credit card and everything is set up at the bank. The only thing I've left to do is sign the paperwork with Luke. Hello, Luke. This is Richard. How's everything coming with the paperwork? Rich, I've had a little administrative help problem here, and getting the final paperwork ready for your signature will take another day or two. What Luke didn't say is that he is deliberately delaying the paperwork until Richard has had time to talk with Joan. It will all go away when they do, he's sure. Can you give me a number where I can reach you, and I'll call when it's ready? I am going to leave my cell phone home. I'll have a landline that you can call, but only in case of emergencies. And under no circumstances are you to give that number to Joan. Call me, and I'll come back and sign everything. Listen, Rich, when Joni gets back, I'll talk with her and see what I can do. I won't give her your number, but I will hear her side of things. If you two want, I'll act as a go-between. God, I'll help in any way I can. You guys are family. I appreciate it, Luke. I really do. I'll call. The rest of the day Richard spent preparing. He picks up the mail in the afternoon and is disappointed that the DNA test results were not there. He needed to know if he had a son or not. At 9 o'clock that evening, Richard quietly disappears. Thursday, October 14th, 2010. Mark, get your butt over there and see what's going on with your father. I haven't been able to talk to him since we left. You call me right back when you get there and let me know what's going on. I need to talk with him before I get home Friday. Somebody's got to pick us up at the airport. Listen, Brenda had this little excursion to see Aunt Dee and Uncle Ted planned from the beginning. If I didn't go, she would have had a major fit. We're in Naples, Florida at your great-aunt and uncle's place, and we'll be flying home tomorrow morning. Call me when you know something about your father. Yes, Mom. I've got it. I'll call you as soon as I talk to dear old Dad. Bye. He drops the phone on the floor, turns over, and puts his hand around Brandy, and drifts back to sleep. Friday, October 15th, 2010. Okay, sleepyhead. Wake up and get a move on. We're here. Joan nudges her sister in the airport shuttle van awake. Already? Oh, it's just your house. Let me sleep until they get to my house. With that, Brenda turns away from the door and goes back to sleep. Thank you, ma'am. Your luggage is by the front door. Please call us on your next trip. The shuttle people are always nice. Joan unlocks the door and hauls the 2 large suitcases and 2 smaller bags into the foyer and sets them at the bottom of the steps. Hello. Rich. Honey, I am home. Where are you? No reply. Nothing. She walks into the kitchen and looks for a note. Nothing. She opens up the back door and calls for Rich again. Again, nothing. It's too quiet. I'll bet he's at the airport waiting for us right now. She calls his cell phone and hears it ringing on the counter. Just like him to forget to take his cell phone with him. I'll get unpacked and start some dinner. By then he should be back. She manhandles one of the larger suitcases up the stairs and opens the bedroom door. The first thing she sees is the large banner on the wall saying surprise. When she looks around the room, her heart skips a beat. Everything is totally different. This is it, she thinks. This is my dream bedroom. It's amazing. It's just what I wanted. Oh, Rich, you little schemer. You had this planned all the time. You just wait until tonight. I'll thank you so hard that you'll be sore for a week. She goes over and rubs the new oak dresser. She sits down in the rocking chair. She kneels down and rubs her hands over the new carpet. She touches everything. She's so happy that tears start to form. Joan goes into the hall and gets the suitcase and lifts it up onto the bed. She sits down beside it, opens it, and starts to unpack. After a minute or two, her attention turns back to the beautiful room. Even the colors are perfect, she says out loud. Where is that man? I want him to see this smile before it wears off. I want to try out this new bed. She scans around the room and her attention turns to the surprise banner. Attached to the bottom of the banner is a small photograph. When she scoots closer to get a good look at it, what she sees causes her heart to sink and her smile to disappear. She sees a photo of her and Tim at the Chicago Awards banquet. It's stapled to the banner. Over her face is the written word 304. Oh my God, no. Please God, say it isn't so. No, no, no. She tears off to her closet, throws open the door, and starts to throw everything around looking for the cosmetics case. It's not there. Tears start to cloud her vision, and she can't see what she's doing anymore. Quickly, she runs downstairs and looks in the living room, kitchen, den, and garage. No cosmetics case. Dejectedly, she goes back to the bedroom and sits down on the new bed and starts crying. Oh my God, no. Please don't say Rich found it. But he must have, otherwise how would there be a picture of Tim and me up there? Joan picks up the phone and calls Mark. No answer. She calls her sister. Again, no answer. She can't call Rich because his phone is downstairs. Now she's starting to feel desperate and quite alone. The tears are flowing down her cheeks now. She can't stop mumbling about Rich and the case and sobbing. After an hour of crying and wailing, Joan gets up and tries the phone again. She calls Mark, her sister, his phone at work, all of their friends, and nobody, but nobody knows where Rich is. She's close to panic when her sister shows up at the door. Now let's just be calm about this. He can't have gone too far. Have you called his friends? Has anybody heard from him lately? How about the ball game? Could he have gone to the ball game? Brenda's doing the best she can, but doesn't have the resources to give any comfort. Quite the opposite. She just makes Joan's tension that much worse. Joan just sits at the kitchen table crying. She can't tell Brenda what she thinks happened. Rich found out about Tim, the man she loved some 20 years ago, and went through the roof. He's gone and is never coming back. She never told anybody about Tim. At the time, Brenda was still a teenager and had a very big mouth anyway, so telling her was out of the question. None of her friends or co-workers knew about Tim and her. But all of that was so long ago. She couldn't tell anyone now because it would just stir up bad feelings. Joan's only choice is to sit tight and wait for Rich to come home or call. She sends Brenda home and promises to call her when Rich shows up. All day long Saturday, she wanders around the house crying and worrying. She talks to Brenda again, who advises she call the police. Joan talks to the police dispatcher, who tells her that she must wait 24 hours before she can report a person missing. Call back on Monday. Desperately, she calls the local hospitals and asks if there is anybody there named Richard Alexander. She feels a bit better when they say that there isn't, but at the same time more worried because she can't find him anywhere. She doesn't hear from Rich on Sunday either and spends the whole day in bed crying and moaning. Oh God, please send my Rich back. I'll do anything. Please God, tell him to just call me so we can talk. I love him with all my heart and it's breaking. Please, God, help me. On Monday, she makes the missing persons report with the police. An officer shows up at the house and takes a recent photograph of him, a full description, and leaves with the not-so-comforting words, "We'll let you know if we find out anything," which means that they'll call if they find his body. Monday's mail has an overnight mail envelope addressed to Richard. Joan immediately tears it open, hoping it might have a clue as to Rich's whereabouts. She finds a letter from the family DNA testing company stating that Richard and Mark are father and son. The additional pages show the common traits that each have that help to determine the parentage. This is all very familiar to Joan because the hospital lab used to do the same type of DNA testing to determine parentage. Joan ponders why in the hell Rich would do a DNA test on Mark. Why would he think that Mark is not his son? Oh no. Is it possible? He must think that Tim could possibly be Mark's real father. But I didn't even meet Tim until Mark was 3. But Rich can't know that. Looking closer at the letter, she sees a note that says that these test results are also being sent to Luke Pauley, attorney at law. Now Joan has a clue. She's got to talk to Luke. He'll help her find Rich. Joan picks up the phone and dials Luke's office. Hi, Joni. I've been expecting your call. God help me, Luke. Where's Rich? I came home and he's gone. He didn't leave me a note or anything. I'm just so lost. I need your help. Where is he, Luke? Please tell me. Joni, I talked to Richard last week and he was very depressed. I don't think he was thinking straight. I told him to talk to you, but he just couldn't face up to it. He's gone and I don't know where he is. He gave me a phone number with strict instructions that I not give it to you. You understand? He also told me about the contents of your cosmetics case. Evidently, he read your letters and is convinced that you are, well, pardon the expression, a lying, cheating witch. Those were his words. He said that he just had to get away and think. Luke, it's not like that. I didn't cheat on him. I love him. Rich doesn't have all the facts. I am sure that when I explain things, everything will make sense. I just need to talk to him. Please tell me where he is. Joni, like I said, I don't know where he is. But I will tell you something very important, and I am breaking a confidence now, and if I get found out, I could get in a lot of trouble with the legal community. But you guys are family, and I'll do anything I can to help. Joni, Rich had me write up divorce papers. He hasn't signed them, but I wrote them up. When he comes in or calls me, I'll let you know. And you two can get together to talk before I let him sign anything. Joni, you understand what's going on. Please talk to me. There was a long silence on the telephone, broken only by Joan sobbing. Please, Luke, call me when you hear from him. I am desperate. Please help us. And she hangs up. The rest of the day Joan spent crying and praying. 10 days later, Luke is a dear friend. I just wish that he hadn't played his lawyer games with me. I could have found out where Rich was a long time ago. He said he wouldn't give me Rich's phone number, but when I had Mark call him and ask him for the number, he gave it to him immediately. When I got it yesterday, I recognized it as Aunt Mary's place. Joan arrives at Aunt Mary's place around noon. Aunt Mary was Richard's great aunt. She was quite a character in her day. She was educated at one of the finest universities in France. She was a world traveler, a nature lover, a poet, and put 3 husbands in their graves. She was in her 80s when she succumbed to a particularly aggressive form of cancer. All of her worldly possessions were passed on to her children, all except her lake house. She always had a soft spot in her heart for Richard and was determined to give him the same peace and relaxation that she found so often by the lake. Richard and Joan inherited the house and visited there 1 or 2 times a year to relax. When they weren't there, it was used as a vacation rental home. The house is nothing remarkable. It's a 1920s-era white clapboard bungalow. There are 3 bedrooms and 1 bath. The most remarkable feature of this particular bungalow is the long wrap-around porch. Just outside the back door is the backyard, which goes back until it reaches the lake's edge where there is a boat dock. Joan parks the car at the side of the house and sees Richard sitting in the backyard on the park bench that is just in front of the water. Today it's fairly cold outside, and Richard's lack of a coat makes her worry about his health. From here she can tell that he looks like shit. He's unshaven and dirty, and the closer she gets to him, the more she can smell the lack of a bath. But a little smell isn't going to deter her from getting him back. She sits on the park bench next to him, but he never looks at her. He just continues to stare off in the distance out at the lake. Joan puts her hand on his. His hand is cold. His eyes are cold. He's breathing, but everything seems to be gone from him. Joan starts talking. Rich, I've got a story to tell you. I hope you can understand what I am saying. I don't totally understand everything, but I am going to be completely honest with you and tell you everything. I won't leave anything out, and I won't lie to you. I'll answer any questions that you want to ask completely. Honey, please listen. Richard doesn't move at all, but Joan talks anyway. I met Tim at Mark's 3rd birthday party at the hospital daycare center. I made cupcakes for all the children and took them up there at the end of the day. While everyone was eating, a man came in to pick up his daughter. I'd seen him before around the hospital, but never talked to him. He came over and thanked me for being so kind to give this little party for his daughter. He thought the party was for her when it was for Mark. Coincidentally, both his daughter and Mark share the same birthday. She's a year older, but born on the same day. We laughed about his little mistake. We started talking about our children, and after a few minutes started talking about ourselves. He was a new doctor at the hospital. It was his first job after medical school. He said he felt a bit overwhelmed with everything. We talked for a while and then went our separate ways. The next day I was going to lunch when we passed in the hall. He stopped and we talked a bit and then asked if I would have lunch with him because he said he didn't have any friends at the hospital yet. We went to lunch almost every day after that. We were friendly and talked about just about everything. One day he told me about some research on diabetes patients and how weight control can have a major impact on the disease. I read over the report he told me about, and it mentioned Weight Watchers as an innovative program that can have a major benefit. That's when I decided to join. After a few weeks, I told him that I was going, and he said that he could tell. He said that I was always pretty, but now someone beautiful was starting to emerge. That's the first time he was personal and complimented my looks. Over the next few months, I continued to lose weight, and we continued to meet for lunch. Our conversation turned to more personal topics like desires, fantasies, and the like. One day he asked me if I would like to meet him after work for dinner. By then I was starting to have feelings for him. I wanted to be with him. I wanted to talk to him. I found that I wanted to go out to dinner with him. At dinner he confessed that he was starting to have feelings about me. I told him I was feeling the same thing. He told me about his wife, and I told him about you. I said that I loved you and would never do anything to hurt you. He said the same thing about his wife. By the time dinner was finished, we were holding hands. We didn't do anything more than hold hands. One day in the parking lot at work, he leaned over and kissed me. I felt the same way with his kiss that I've always felt with yours. I kissed him back. We met for dinner a couple more times. One time we had dinner at the Marriott over on Jackson Highway. Neither of us said anything, but after dinner we got a room, and that is the first time we made love. Rich, I've got to tell you that I felt everything for him that I have always felt for you. I loved him. I loved you. I couldn't figure it out. How could I be in love with two men at the same time? I didn't understand it, but I didn't want it to stop. We continued to meet a few times a month. When we made love, it was exactly the same as when you and I made love. Completely, deeply, and without any reservation. Our love grew. Now I knew that I was in love with two men, you and Tim. I couldn't hurt either of you, and I couldn't be apart from either of you. I had a problem that I couldn't solve. Suddenly, without saying a single word, Richard stands up and starts walking toward the house. Joan sits stunned and watches him go into the house. She goes over and tries the door he just entered, but it's locked. She goes around and tries all of the doors, and they are all locked. It's close to dusk and getting colder, so she doesn't have any choice but get into her car to get warm. She's just going to wait him out and continue talking when he's ready. She'll wait. Joan awakens to the early morning sound of a motorboat starting up. From where she's sitting in the front seat of her car, she can see Richard sitting in a small skiff and slowly puttering out onto the lake. She gets out of her car and slowly walks out to the park bench, all the while watching him in the little boat. She sits down onto the bench at the same time the skiff comes to a stop in the middle of the lake and the motor switches off. For a long time, Richard and the boat just sit there and she just watches. After a while, Richard stands up in the little boat and falls into the water. He can't swim. Oh God, no. Help. Oh God, help. Help. Joan screams over and over until the next door neighbor comes out to find what all the screaming is about. He can't swim and he fell in. Help him. Please. Joan was hysterical at that point and was starting to hyperventilate. The neighbor jumps into his own boat and rushes out to the skiff in the middle of the lake to see if there is anything he can do. Joan can't see what was happening from the shore when the neighbor stops next to the skiff. After a few minutes, the neighbor's boat heads back to shore. When the boat docks, Joan could see Richard lying in the bottom of the boat. He wasn't moving and she couldn't tell if he was dead or alive. Here, help me get him inside and out of these wet clothes, the neighbor bellows at Joan. Between the two of them, they pulled and tugged at Richard until he was lying on the bed in the bungalow. Joan kisses the neighbor on the cheek and thanks him over and over before he leaves. She spends the better part of the next hour getting Richard cleaned up and into some dry clean clothes. She even shaves him. Then she just sits beside the bed and watches him sleep. 2 hours later, he gets up and ambles out to the kitchen table and plops onto one of the chairs. He looks up at Joan. This was the first time that he even acknowledged her presence. He just stares at her and starts to cry. After a while, he stops crying and opens his mouth to talk, but the words don't come out. He stops and tries again. It takes 3 tries before the sounds came out. I don't know if you remember me telling you about my girlfriend before I met you, Carolyn. We were going steady for about a year. One day I called her on the phone, like I always did, just to talk. She told me that she didn't want to see me anymore. She had a new boyfriend and she was breaking up with me. I don't remember what we said, but when I hung up, I jumped into my car and drove over to her house as fast as I could. When I got there, Carolyn and her new boyfriend were standing in the front yard, I guess waiting for me. I looked at her and she had a worried look on her face, but I went right up to him and got nose to nose with him. He said some bullshit and Carolyn gave me a pleading look that I interpreted to mean to not hurt him. So, I backed down. I just stared at him with hate in my eyes. Eventually, I turned around and walked to my car. I could hear him laughing at me as I walked away. Carolyn never said a word. That hurt like hell. A couple weeks later, I was getting out of my car at the drugstore when I saw Carolyn's new boyfriend going in too. I reached back into my car and got the fat end of a pool stick that I kept under the front seat and hid it behind my back. My intention was to beat the living shit out of that a-hole using that pool stick. When I was about 10 or so feet from him, he saw me, but I was suddenly face to face with Larry Oliver. Larry was a guy from the neighborhood who was a few years older than me. He got in trouble with the cops from time to time, and my mother didn't like him. I don't know why he took a liking to me, but whenever he saw me, he was my best friend in the world. I don't remember what he asked me or what I said back, but I distinctly remember what he said to me at the end. He said something that was absolutely life-changing. He said, "There isn't a girl in the world worth doing what you are thinking of doing." I looked at Larry, then to the stick in my hand, then over to Mr. A-hole, and for the second time turned around and walked away. I believed what he said to be true until the day I met you. Larry was wrong. There are women in this world worth dying for, worth killing for. You are one. After a long pause, Richard continued. Today, out on the lake, I was holding onto the side of that boat when the story of Carolyn and Larry came back to me. Once again, I realized that there are women in this world worth dying for, worth killing for. You. But to kill myself because of what you did was wrong on many levels. Today, I backed down again. I wanted to live. I wanted to live for you. I wanted a chance to talk to you. I don't know anything anymore except that I can't leave this world without at least finding out why I am going. I need to talk to you." Another long pause, and Richard puts his head down on his arms on the table. Joan comes over behind him and puts her arms around him. Joan quietly cries while Richard just lies there. After a very long time like that, Richard sits up, looks into Joan's eyes and says simply, "Let's go home." 2 months later. Things haven't been normal between Joan and Richard. They live in the same house, but things are different. Everybody can see that. Joan sleeps in her new, beautiful bedroom and Richard sleeps in the spare room. Richard is more subdued and Joan seems to always be walking around on eggshells. They have not talked yet. Brenda doesn't dare to come over because both of them will no longer tolerate her shit. Mark will only come over for short visits and only when someone offers him dinner. Every weekend, Richard goes to Aunt Mary's house and spends time fixing up the place and puttering. All while he's gone, Joan is on pins and needles, worried that Richard will try to kill himself again. But today is a special occasion. Today is Mark's birthday, and he and his wife are over for the usual cake and presents. When it's Richard's turn to give Mark his present, he turns and goes into the garage. When he comes back, he's carrying the little cosmetics case and places it on the table. He also places the copy of the DNA test report on the table. Joan is horrified and worried about what Richard is planning to do. All Richard says is, "Mark, your mother has a story to tell you. It will be hard for her, but she has a lot to say, and you may not want to hear some of it. But pay attention and listen carefully. I already know most of it, so I'll be going out. I'll be back later." With that said, Richard turns and goes out the door. Joan runs from the room hysterical. All Mark and Brandy can do is just sit and watch the drama unfold. They knock on the bedroom door and plead with her to come back downstairs, but all they hear is crying on the other side of the door. It takes an hour or so, but eventually Joan comes back down to the kitchen. Joan looks at Mark and starts the story of her and Tim. Around midnight, Richard comes back in the door and tells Mark to go home. "I'll take it from here." When they leave, Richard walks up to Joan and hands her a card. The card says, "Dr. Jean Brooks, marriage counselor. We've got an appointment next Tuesday at 6. Without another word, he turns and goes up to bed. Next Tuesday. Well, the Alexanders are next. This should prove to be a challenging case. On the surface, it looks like the usual case of spousal infidelity, but this one has some major twists. I've never seen one exactly like it. I only hope I can give them what they're looking for. Let's see." On the initial consultation with Mr. Alexander told of his wife having an affair over 20 years ago that he just found out about from a hoard of old love letters. It seems that the affair ended tragically with her lover getting killed in an auto accident. She went into a state of depression at the time. When Mr. Alexander found out about the affair 2 months ago, he too became depressed and tried to kill himself. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Mr. and Ms. Alexander, please come in and have a seat on the couch. It's good to meet you, Ms. Alexander. I met your husband in our initial consultation. So let me tell you a little about myself. I've already told your husband this, but he can just sit quietly while you and I get to know one another. Joan, I am a clinical psychologist that specialized in marital problems. Specifically, I work in the area of marital infidelity problems. When a spouse strays, it usually wreaks havoc on a relationship. My job is to get to the root cause and to find a common ground for moving forward as a couple again. Frankly, sometimes the couple decides that they can't work things out and they go their separate ways. But I am always optimistic at the beginning because I think we will be able to find that common ground and move forward. I don't perform miracles and I don't expect them from you, but we will find answers and move forward. Our sessions will work like this. On Tuesday evenings, we will meet together and talk. I will set the guidelines for discussion each night, and I can stop the discussion whenever I feel like it, or when time runs out. The one rule that must be agreed to by everybody here is honesty. If I get a hint of deception from either of you, I'll be like a tiger and go for your throat unmercifully. I take no prisoners when it comes to our sessions. I am not like a lot of therapists that treat everybody and every issue with kid gloves. I will call a spade, and you will not always be happy with what I say. But we will progress. We will find all of the truths that exist in your marriage. Some of the truths will be enlightening. Some may be extremely painful, but we will bring them to the surface and we will deal with them. I won't take sides, even though it may look like I do sometimes. Remember this. I am in charge for our hour each week. After our initial session, I will meet with both of you individually for as many sessions as I need to get your entire story and your point of view. I may just sit and listen, or I may ask questions. These sessions will be more flexible. But believe one thing. I will find the truth as each of you sees it. After each joint session, I ask that you both reserve some time together at home, away from all distractions, to sit and talk about the latest session and what we talked about. Don't go into new areas, just talk about that day's topics. From time to time, I'll assign you homework. That will be a good time to do your homework. However, if you can't discuss something or start to argue or get upset, then just stop and we'll pick it up the next time. This time is yours to further explore the topic of the day and to absorb whatever you need to. If you have questions that you can't or don't want to answer in your private time, or if you have a question that you haven't thought of before, then write them down and bring them to the next session. Everything is open for discussion here. There are no exceptions. At home, you will want to be a bit more reserved. Do you have any questions at this point? Both heads are shaking no. Okay then, let's get started. The hour goes quickly. Neither Joan nor Richard says a word to one another on the way home. Once home, Joan asks, "So how do you want to do this?" "I think maybe we could take the hour after we get home to sit and talk. Maybe we could have a little wine and sit in the living room. I'll need a box of tissue close by. How's that sound?" "It sounds okay to me. I would ask just a couple changes. 1. We should have soda or water, but not alcohol. I don't trust what I might say under the influence. 2. Turn the telephones off. We don't need any stupid telephone solicitors disturbing us." "That's fair. I'll get the phones." Once settled in the living room, there is a long silence before anyone speaks. It's almost as though neither one knows where to start. Finally, Richard asks, "Today you said that you were happy with me, with us, and have always been. I don't understand how you can say that if the first thing you do after we're married is find another man and crawl into bed with him. How can you be happy with me? Didn't I give you everything you ever wanted? Did I not satisfy you? What did I do wrong that made you find somebody else? I just don't understand." Wait a minute. Dr. Brooks said to talk about only the things we talked about in today's session. At no time did we talk about anyone but you and me. We never mentioned another person. We only talked about how we felt about each other and our marriage. We need to wait to talk about someone else. We'll talk about it only after we first talked about it in session. The one part one will answer, if you will too, is how happy I've always been with you and our marriage. That's no lie, Rich. From the day we met until today, I have always been happy, no ecstatic, that I was married to you. I've never once wanted to not be married to you. Rich, I love you. I've always loved you, and I plan to love you until the day I die. And if you were no longer in my life, I would die. As God is my witness, this is true. What about you? Yeah, you're right. I was getting a little ahead of things. You know that I can be impatient, Joan. Except for the last couple months, I've always thought that we had the ideal marriage. Sure, we've had the occasional argument, but nothing major. I've always wanted to be married to you. I've never looked anywhere else and have never had the desire to see if there is another woman out there better than you. You have always been my anchor. I've always been happy to be married to you. I've always loved you. But lately, everything I've ever believed has been tossed upside down. Now, I don't know what to think or believe. I don't know what's real and what's not. Most of the time, I can't even look you in the eye. It just hurts too much. I can't get your letters out of my mind. I can't stop thinking of you with. Stop. Don't go there. We'll talk about that, but not now. Well, then just answer this. I'm sure this isn't off topic. How many others have there been? If I looked around the house, would I find a shoebox with notes from one guy, and a pocketbook full of stuff from another, and shit from someone else on your laptop? How many others have you been with during our wonderful, happy marriage? What are you accusing me of? You'd better not be saying what I think you're saying. I am not a 304. I've only been with 2 men in my entire life, you and Tim. Now you're accusing me of sleeping with everybody in town? Well, look at it from my point of view. You lied to me about one guy. How am I to believe that you didn't lie to me about others? How can I trust anything you tell me? I've never been with anybody else. Let's talk about that after we talk about it in session. No, I can't. I need to know now. I need to fix this mess in my head. I hurt all the time. If we can't talk about this now, then we're done here. I am tired. I am going to bed. With that, Richard walks upstairs and goes to bed. After the upstairs door slams, Joan says under her breath, "Damn, that didn't go well." She gets herself a glass of wine, turns off the lights, and goes back to the couch to sit in the dark with her box of tissues. For weeks later, the drive home from tonight's session is tense. You can tell that both Joan and Richard want to say something but are waiting until they get home to their private time to talk. Once settled in the living room, Joan speaks up first. "Han, you never told me that you read all the letters, everything we wrote. I just didn't think about it. At first I was angry because it seemed like that was such an invasion of privacy. Then I was deeply embarrassed at being mad because I hid all of this from you. I deceived you. Hell, I couldn't tell you. If I had, then there wouldn't have been an us anymore. I just never thought about your pain. I didn't think about it when Tim and I were together, and I didn't think about what it would do to you if you read our letters. It must have been awful reading what we said. We wrote some pretty intimate things. Things that you and I did, but we never wrote down for others to read. That must have hurt like hell. I am so sorry. Rich, I can't change the past. I can't take away the pain you felt when you found out. I don't know what I can do to make you feel better. But understand this. I will do anything and everything I can to help you understand whatever you want to understand, so we can put this all in the past where it belongs. Rich, I can't say it enough. I love you and I want you back. I'll do anything to get you to love me again. Please, hon. Joan, first, I've never stopped loving you. I don't think that I could if I wanted to. The only way that could happen is if I were dead. But let's don't go there. That was definitely the most miserable few days of my life. I watched my mother dying in the hospital, but this was much worse. It was almost like I was watching you and our marriage die right in front of my eyes. No, I guess you can't understand the pain I was feeling. It was awful. But the worst part was the images that I had in my head after reading the graphic depiction of your sexual play. I still can't get those images out of my head. They haunt me day and night. Seeing you in my mind with another man on bed makes me physically ill. Even now I am thinking of the quickest route to the bathroom in case dinner starts to come back up. It's unbearable. It's relentless. You'll never know this type of pain. Rich, we're going to have to talk to Dr. Brooks about what we can both do to get those thoughts to go away, or at least to put them in their proper place. We should ask her about that next time. But for now, we need to focus on just being us. We could take a couple days off this week and get away and just be together. Maybe go to the mountains and watch Mother Nature do her thing. I won't hover, and we don't have to talk or do anything but just be together. How's that sound? I don't know. I am still feeling a bit weird just being around you. The pain is sometimes manageable, and sometimes I worry about what I might do. But if we want to get past this, then we've got to be together and work together. So, okay, let's go. We just won't take any sharp objects with us. This is the first time in a long time that they both laughed at one of Richard's silly jokes. 2 weeks later, Joan is staring at Richard all during the drive home. She has a question to ask, but she knew that it was going to make Richard angry, but she had to know the answer. She would wait until they were home again. Rich, what is my babe period that you talked about? I don't want to talk about it, Richard said tersely. Why? Because it hurts too much to think about. Let's just talk about something else. I don't understand. What is it that hurts so much? What did I do? Tell me. Let's just change the subject, okay? No. I want to know. Tell me. Richard looks at her angrily as he replies, okay. You really want to know? All right. I'll tell you. Your babe period, as I so cleverly called it, was that time a long time ago when you started going to Weight Watchers and lost all that weight. At the same time, you started going to the tanning salon and getting your nails done and bought a whole new wardrobe, a sexy wardrobe. You changed a lot. You were no longer that overweight cutie that I married. You were a babe. When we went out, men would turn and look at you giving you the eye. I was proud and at the same time a little jealous. I used to think that I was the luckiest man in the world to have this beautiful woman next to me. I was also worried that some rich, handsome guy would come and take you away from me. Me, I am just an average guy with average looks, nothing special. You were special. You were a babe, and you were with me. I loved every minute of it, because this beautiful babe of a woman was with me. All of that lasted until you got sick and depressed that month. You started to change back into your old self. You gained back all of the weight and started wearing your conservative clothes again. Now, for as long as I've known you, you were a large woman. Your weight never was an issue for me. I've always loved your body. It's soft and smooth, everywhere. But the babe was gone. That whole time just pains me to think about now. Happy? I don't understand. Why does that hurt so much? I don't see anything wrong with it. What? Damn it, Joan. Because you didn't do it for me. You did it for some guy you were screwing in a hotel every week. Not for me. Not for your husband. I always loved that time until I read your damned letters. Now, that memory is screwed. You didn't do it for me. There is silence. A very long period of silence. Oh God, how could you? How could I? Richard gets up and goes upstairs to bed. 8 weeks later, neither one says anything for a long time in the living room after today's session. There seems to be worry lines on both of their foreheads. Today's session was enlightening and disheartening at the same time. Dr. Brooks was not very gentle with her tone and said that they will continue this discussion next time. I don't understand when Dr. Brooks says that you were experiencing a common thing when you were in love with 2 men at the same time, Richard says. It almost sounds like psychological mumbo-jumbo when she talks about loving people simultaneously and sequentially. I can understand the physics of it, it's just the emotions I can't get a grip on. What she was saying was that I loved both you and Tim at the same time. Usually a relationship like this is disastrous, and eventually somebody gets hurt. In our case, you and I were hurt many years after the fact. That's the simultaneous part of what she was talking about. The sequential part is very common and is an accepted part of life. When two people love each other, and one dies, the other moves on and falls in love again. This is common with divorced couples too. They were both in love with each other, but after the divorce they then were in love with other people. I understand it, okay, but why don't you? From my point of view, I can't imagine myself not loving you, or you not being there for me to love. But for you to not feel the same way is something I don't understand. If you love somebody, it's completely and forever. There is no loving someone else without diminishing the love for both. You can't be completely in two places at the same time. You said that, and that's what I don't get. Truthfully, sometimes I don't fully understand it. I can only tell you that when I am with you, you and only you are my whole world. When I was with Tim, he was my whole world. I never felt like I gave either of you less than 100% of myself or my love. And at no point did either of those two worlds intersect. It was like a light switch, in one position you and the other position Tim. I don't know the psychology behind it, but I do know what I felt. I loved two men at the same time, completely and forever. I guess we're going to have to talk about this a lot more before I'll be able to see your side of things. For now, we should just write down any question for next session. Neither seemed satisfied, but they went to their respective bedrooms afterwards. 6 weeks later, Joan is crying a lot less now that they were sitting in their living room. Richard starts. Han, I'm sorry I said what I said. I didn't mean it. Well, maybe in some way I did, but I wasn't trying to hurt you or be vindictive. I was just saying that I was glad he died because I didn't have to share you with him. Until Dr. Brooks explained that his dying was as hard on you as my dying would have been, I couldn't see it from your point of view. I now understand it a little, I think. The man you loved died, and you didn't have anybody to grieve with. You were alone in the world with your grief. You had me, but you couldn't tell me without losing me. I can see why you were depressed. I would have been too if you had died. I'm sorry I said it that way. I didn't mean it. Joan? Oh, Rich, you can be so damned hard-headed sometimes. You've been trying to understand how I could feel the same way about two men at the same time, and now you can't see how losing one or the other of them would be devastating to me. Well, now do you understand? I loved him. He died. I died at the same time. I grieved. This is exactly what I would have done if you had died. It's the same 20 years ago as it is now. If you had died that day on the lake, I would have died too. Do you get it now? Richard is a bit sheepish now, but replies anyway. I guess on some level I do. I didn't mean it that way. I can be selfish too. I know we just touched on it today, but get this. When you found out about Tim, it was as though I had to go through all of the sorrows of his dying all over again. I guess I still have feelings for him. I haven't thought of him in years, but I can still see his face, and he'll always be in my memories. Now that you know, I've got to relive all of the agony all over again, and it's killing me. Can we just let Dr. Brooks talk us through this one next week? I can see how it's going to be hard on both of us. Okay, but get me a glass of wine before you go to bed. I need to be alone for a while. Richard gets the wine, turns off the living room lights, and heads upstairs. At the top of the stairs, he hears sobbing coming from downstairs. He closes the door to his room quietly. 8 weeks later, Joan lets it all hang out. I can't talk to you tonight. You make me so mad I could just strangle you. You wanted to divorce me without even talking to me? How could you? Are you nuts? We've talked about everything every day since we were married, and at this crucial point in our relationship, our future, you want to go it alone? Are you out of your mind? Shit. I'm going to bed. Now it's Richard's turn in the dark living room with a beer. Richard doesn't like wine very much. Next morning, some say that the smell of coffee brewing can raise the dead. That is the first thought meandering through Richard's brain this morning. He opens one eye just slightly and sees the living room ceiling. The smell of coffee is still there. He opens the other eye and turns his head ever so slightly to look in the direction of the kitchen. There he sees a tall, womanly figure dressed in a bathrobe, holding a steaming hot cup of coffee. Breakfast is almost ready. Go clean up. Go. Joan is the womanly figure dressed in a bathrobe that he sees. After all these years, she still looks like a goddess in the morning, voluptuous and Mother Earth-like. His heart beats a little faster, and it had nothing to do with the coffee she was holding. Up sits Richard and immediately knocks over the empty beer bottle on the floor. He plods up to the bathroom, pees, and washes up. When he looks in the mirror, he sees bloodshot eyes and the impression of the couch cushion on the side of his face. Neither is pretty, but he goes back downstairs to breakfast anyway. After a great meal, After all, he didn't have to cook it. He sits back and really looks at Joan for the first time today. She too has bloodshot eyes. "I am sorry," Joan says quietly. "I am still having a lot trouble with this looking at something from the other person's point of view thing. We're definitely going to have to write that down for Dr. Brooks for next time." Richard smiles, and that's something he hasn't done a lot of lately. "That's okay. I am having trouble with it too. But for me, it's when I say something, I don't always think about how it will sound to you, or how it will make you feel. I am sorry too. How about if we have our conversation this morning? Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing off of work today?" "I took off because it's more important that to be here and talk this out with you than to push a bunch of papers at the lab. They can do without me today." An hour later, they are both sitting in the backyard with another cup of coffee talking. "Why did you ask Luke to write up divorce papers?" Joan asks. "Well, I was so hurt and confused, I guess I wasn't thinking straight. All I knew was that you cheated, and I didn't want anything to do with you anymore. I've always thought that. Once a cheater, always a cheater, and I guess that I thought that I didn't want to go through that shit over and over again. Like I said, I wasn't thinking too straight. But why did you not want to talk to me? Maybe we could have talked this out?" That answer I know. If we had talked, I would have said things to you that I would have regretted. It would have hurt both of us, maybe to a point where we couldn't repair it. I also knew that if we had talked then, I would not have understood anything you said. There was way too much mess in my mind to make sense of it. Besides, I was hurt and was thinking that if you suffered a little too, then I would feel better. By the way, I don't feel better. At that time, I just wanted you to go away. I knew that I couldn't have lived for long without you. But at that moment, I just didn't want to be near you. Does that make sense? It makes a lot of sense, actually. I am going to bet that all of those nasty things that you thought about me, I also thought about me. We have to be careful and let the good doctor guide us through this minefield. We can't let any thought go unsaid or unanswered. We have to go slowly and carefully. Joan, can I ask you a question a bit off topic? Sure, anything. Did you ever consider leaving me while you were with him? Absolutely not. I loved you. I never once thought about leaving you. I've always said that you are my whole world. I wasn't going to give you up. I loved you. I loved you both. We haven't yet resolved that issue, but I could never have given you or Tim up. I would have died. It's still an open sore for me. I don't know if I'll ever get it resolved. I may just have to live with it as one of life's unanswered questions. But I am glad to hear that you didn't want to dump me. Been there, done that, as they say. I understand. Now, shut up and let's get some sun. You're entirely too pale. It's a beautiful sunny day and the Alexanders are outside catching some rays. For weeks later. Wow, that was an eye-opener, Richard said as they came in the door after their therapy session. Do we want to talk about this now, or sleep on it? I don't know about you, but I'm still wired from the session. I say we talk now, but you look exhausted. I'm okay. It's just hard remembering everything, and being completely open and honest about sex has always been difficult for me. Hell, even saying BJ out loud is rough. I am mentally exhausted, but we can still talk if you want. But tonight I am going to need something more than a soda. Okay, you go relax and I'll get us something to drink. Richard gets a glass of wine for Joan and a soda for himself. When he comes back into the living room, Richard sees Joan on the couch with her head back and her eyes closed. For a moment, he thinks about just quietly putting a blanket over her legs and going up to bed, but she opens her eyes and gives him a faint, crooked smile. This crooked smile was one of the things that made Richard take notice of her way back in high school. Joan says, "Okay, Han, where do you want to start?" "I don't know. How about you explaining to me what you meant when you said that he would rock your world in a way different than me? I always thought that our sex life was good and that I would rock your world just fine, but evidently I somehow didn't quite measure up. It's not that you were any worse or better than Tim. When you and I made love, we did just that. We made love. After Mark was born, we rarely went crazy or tried new things. We were comfortable with what we did. We knew each other's every wish and desire. We didn't need to experiment anymore. In the past, we tried a lot of different sex things and found what we liked and did them, not because we had to, or because we were bored, but because that is what we wanted to do. With Tim, we were exploring sex all over again, and some of the things that we did and liked were different than what you and I did. It's almost like we found our own comfort zone with sex. But you did things with him that you didn't do with me." "No, not really. You and I tried everything." Yeah, Richard says. "But with Tim, we found things that we both loved that were different than you and me." "Yeah, I read that. Thanks for reminding me." No, I don't mean to upset you. I am just saying that when Tim and I made love, we had a different set of sex acts that turned us on, but in the end, we still made love. I never did anything with either of one of you that I didn't do with the other. If you were into something strange like, oh, I don't know, public sex, then I would try it and would probably be as much into it as you were, because you were into it. Does that make sense? I guess. I don't know. I am still having trouble getting the image out of my mind of the woman I love screwing someone else. I'll probably never get over it. I just wish that every time I look at you, I didn't see or imagine of screwing another man. Now that you told me all of this tonight, I am going to have the image of you screwing him just one more nail in my mental coffin. Shit. I didn't mean to hurt you any more than I already have. It's just that I am being as open and honest as I can possibly be to help us heal. It hurts me just as much to say these things out loud as it does for you to hear. Well, we've still got a long way to go, I guess. I know that we haven't made love since all of this started, and frankly, I don't think that I could. Sometimes I get excited thinking about you, but it goes away pretty quickly when I think about you and him. This is going to be tough to get past, if I can get past it. I know, Han. I am here whenever you're ready, but only when you're comfortable. I'll wait as long as necessary. I love you and I always will. 6 weeks later. Let's see. She says, looking at her appointment book on her laptop. The Alexanders are next. Today is going to be quite a surprise for them. I hope they're really as prepared as I think they are. Dr. Brooks gets up and goes to the waiting room and sees both Richard and Joan sitting there talking and holding hands. Well, that's a good sign. Joan, Richard, come on in. When everybody is seated in their usual places on the couch, Dr. Brooks begins. How's everybody today? I don't think I have any unresolved issues from last time, so I'll just ask you if you have anything you want to talk about. Richard, you've had to get past all of those images in your mind of Joan being with someone else. I can imagine they still flashed up on you and were disturbing and difficult to get past. Both of you have to remember that you must be patient with each other and talk through things when they feel wrong. You've made a lot of progress. Yeah, I hope so, Joan adds. This past weekend was awkward because we do know what to expect, but we're walking around the luggage we each were carrying, trying not to trip over anything. Looking directly at Richard this time, Joan says, "We will get better, Han, I guarantee it. I love you and will do whatever I have to make you feel comfortable with me, with us. Nothing is more important to me right now than having you back with me each night. I've missed you more than you know. I need you and I love you. Just be patient," Richard says. "We've still got some demons to conquer." After a long pause in the conversation, the doctor gives them the news. "This will be our last session together. You two have come a long way since our first meeting, and I think it's time for you to go it alone. Oh, I'll always be here if you should need me, but now the best therapy is for you two to go and figure out what's normal for you now. Both of you have learned a lot about yourselves and each other, some good and some not so good." The doctor then pointed at me to speak. "All right, Doc, after our deep conversation and listening to my wife, her deep feelings and emotions, I think I have already decided what I wanted to do." I turned to Joan and said, "Joan, you know I have loved you with all my heart, and unlike you, I only had you in my heart, and I have never divided my attention or my loyalty with you. As you have already said that you loved me, and at the same time loved him as well, and you have always given us both your 100% love. That is where I fail to understand how you can give your 100% to both of us. I am your lawfully married husband. I was married to you in the house of God. You promised to be loyal to me and forsake all others. But you breaking that promise tells me that you have not given me 100%. So, in short, if I continue to be your husband, I would always be that man who was never loved completely by his wife. I accidentally came to know about your relationship with Tim. You never told me about your feeling with me. Had you told me, I would have divorced you, and the pain would have been far less than what it is today. I am not sure what shortcomings that I had as a husband that led to this affair. It's been a year that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but I was put on this journey by the person I loved and trusted the most. I don't trust you anymore. I am not sure how many such boxes that I might find out if I ever go and clean the house. I know for a fact that I am not the only man in your heart. That hurts, and I cannot go for the remainder of my life with that feeling. Looking at you for the rest of my life and knowing how you lied to me for so many years, making me live a beautiful dream that was rotten and stinking in the core by your deceit and betrayal. It was nice to hear that you love me, but a slap on my face that you loved him and gave him 100%. So, you leave me no place other than to be by my own side alone. I will be filing for a divorce tomorrow morning. We will split everything 50-50 and walk away. I will not hold any ill feelings for you going further, because when I leave this room today, I will not carry any feelings for you at all. You may try to contest the divorce and drag it, but I don't plan to staying with you at all. Since you never thought of our marital status before starting your affair, I will not bother about it now. Divorced, not divorced, that status never will hold me back. I am mentally, emotionally, and spiritually divorced from you. Thank you, Doc, for this session. Now, I really don't care what this old lady has to say. You have been paid and my therapy is done. I got up, looked at a crying Joan, did not say another word and walked out. Walking out, I felt the air in my face. It felt great. After ages, I felt so relaxed. I felt free. Joan was served the next week. I had already taken out my half of the money. Just the house is remaining to be split. I got myself a new condo near my office. She tried her best to contact me, but I never took her calls or returned her messages. My son tried to patch up things. So, I just asked him, what if after years of bliss he wakes up in a nightmare? Would he still live in a nightmare? He has stopped pestering me. 2 years later, I was finally free of my marriage. Joan tried every trick in the book. I never bothered to pay any attention to her. She begged, threatened, and cried. As I said, I hold no emotion for her. So whatever she did never had any impact on me. At my age, finding a partner is next to impossible. But to tell you what, I live with 3 lovely German Shepherds. I know for a fact, I am their only love. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.